There's a story in I believe it's John chapter 5 at the pool of Bethsaida where there's in the place of Solomon's colonnades there are a series of porches is what they're called, and it's all around this pool where when an angel would come and read the scriptures, John does a great job of capturing this reality. When an angel would come and stir the waters, it's waters of healing is what would happen in this pool. The invalids would try to crawl into the pool so that they would be healed. So Jesus comes into this environment and he asks this paralyzed man, "Do you want to be healed?" And the man says to Jesus, "Every time I try to get in the pool when the water is stirred, people get in before me," which Jesus wasn't asking about the process. Jesus just asked him a straightforward question. Do you want to be healed? And he had all these reasons why he hasn't experienced healing. But praise the Lord that he is face to face with the great physician who just simply says to him, "Grab your mat, stand up, and go home." So it says immediately. That's a good word. I love that word. And immediately peace came. And immediately my heart was settled. And immediately, I love those times. But what Jesus did was he said to him, he gave him a directive. And what he had to do is move in agreement with the directive that Jesus gives. He said, pick up your mat, stand up, and go home. What if he's like, you know what? The water hasn't been stirred, so I'm just going to stay right here under this covering that was provided by human beings. God didn't build the porches in Solomon's colonnade, these porches. Human beings built those porches for the sake of the healing. It was the pool that brought the healing, not the porches. The porches just produced a level of relief as they were waiting for the healing to come. But sometimes we appreciate the covering that is just to sustain us, and we live in that space instead of actually pursuing the healing that God has set aside for us. And then sometimes, maybe not us in this room, but sometimes we might get in a place where we just justify staying under the porch. Well, there's no use in me trying because every time I try, and Jesus is like, well, just follow these directives. Well, who's given the command? The same one that calmed the waves. The same one that calls Lazarus out of the tomb. That same one is giving a directive. So he moves in agreement with the directive that's given, and he takes his mat and he walks, and the people who are the keepers of the law are like, hey, don't you carry your mat on the Sabbath? And he's like, well, the one that brought healing told me, come on, my man, come on. He told me to take up my mat and go. And this is a part, right? That's a beautiful story. But then there's the end of this interaction that Jesus has. Jesus finds him later and says, see, you're healed. See, look what God did. He told him to see. Look at where you were. Look at where you are, according to the promise that was given. Then he says, go and stop living the same life. Otherwise, something worse is going to happen. I'm not saying that all of the things that we face is because of the decisions that we make, but I'm not saying none of them are. So what Jesus is showing him is the reality of the kind of agreement that he's asking him not to get into. You have to close the doors. Last week we sealed some things, prayed over some things. People came up to the altar, tears, weeping. And then if we're not careful, we go right back out into the same space and do the same things. And then we find ourselves back at the altar again, praying about the same things, crying the same tears, and then we go back out and do the same thing, and then we come back up to the altar. This is called a pattern. It's a pattern. So what we do during this time of prayer and fasting, that has the corporate time of prayer and fasting that has culminated. Last week we spent some time. It's time to continue to allow his harvest, his seed, his work to be done in us.